My name is Helen. I am 67 years old, and I have spent the last 4 decades of my life doing one thing I truly love: bookkeeping. Not glamorous, I know. My daughter used to tease me about it. Mum, you're the only person alive who gets excited about a balanced ledger. She wasn't wrong. Numbers make sense to me. They don't lie, they don't manipulate. Every dollar either goes somewhere or it doesn't. Simple as that. I retired 3 years ago after my husband Gerald passed. Prostate cancer. We had 38 years together, and when he was gone, I rattled around our house in Naperville, Illinois like a loose marble in a shoebox. My daughter Nora suggested I sell and move somewhere smaller. I didn't. That house is mine. Gerald and I picked out every cabinet door in that kitchen together. I wasn't going anywhere. I kept myself busy. I volunteered at the library twice a week. I tended my garden. I walked 2 miles every morning past the old Methodist church on Elm Street. My life was quiet, and I was learning, slowly, painfully, to be okay with quiet. Then my son, Colin, got married. I want to be careful here because I don't want to come across as one of those mothers-in-law. The difficult kind, the kind who nitpicks everything and can't let her son belong to another woman. I genuinely tried to welcome her. I made reservations at a nice restaurant the first time we met. I offered to help with the wedding. I bought gifts for her bridal shower without being asked. I tried. Her name was Amber, 29 years old, originally from somewhere outside Nashville, though she never talked much about her family. She was beautiful in a very put-together way. Always the right outfit, always the right shade of lipstick, always laughing at exactly the right moment. Colin was head over heels. I could see it from a mile away. That particular kind of blindness that overtakes a man when he believes he's found the one. Our first real conversation, just the two of us, over coffee at my kitchen table, was pleasant enough. She told me she did brand consulting. I asked what that meant exactly. She smiled and said, I help small businesses figure out their identity. It sounded vague to me, but I let it go. Colin seemed proud of her, and that was enough for the moment. They got married in September. Small ceremony, outdoor venue, about 40 minutes from here. I wore the blue dress Gerald always liked. I cried a little when Colin said his vows, which embarrassed him, but he held my hand during the reception, and that was enough for me. They moved into a rented townhouse in Lisle, about 20 minutes away. For the first few months, things were fine. We had Sunday dinners. We talked on the phone. Amber was polite, if a little distant. I told myself that was normal. Blending families takes time. The trouble started so gradually I almost didn't notice. It began with small things. Amber mentioning, offhandedly, that their landlord was raising the rent. Colin looking uncomfortable at dinner, changing the subject quickly. Then, one Sunday, Amber mentioned she'd found a wonderful opportunity, a pop-up boutique at a local market. She needed some startup inventory. Just a few $100s to get things going. Colin looked at me over the table with an expression I didn't quite know how to read. I said I'd think about it. I didn't give her money that time. A week later, Colin called me separately. Just to chat, he said. Then, near the end of the conversation, Mom, Amber's really stressed about the boutique. You know, even just a small loan would mean a lot to her. I gave him $500. Told myself it was a gift to both of them. Told myself that's what family does. That was my first mistake. 3 weeks after that, Amber called me herself. Her voice was warm, even a little girlish. Helen, I hope you don't mind me calling. I just feel so close to you. I remember feeling flattered by that, which tells you everything about how well she read people. She told me the boutique had gone well, but she needed to reorder inventory for a holiday market. She'd already done the research. She just needed access to something more convenient than a bank transfer. Could she use my card just this once? She'd pay me back by the end of the month. I should have said no. I know that. I know exactly what I should have said. But she was my son's wife, and she was asking with such warmth. And I thought, this is how you build trust with a daughter-in-law. You extend the hand first. I gave her my Visa number. I told myself I'd keep an eye on it. The first charge came through 2 days later. $412 at a home goods store. I thought, all right, that's for inventory display probably. Then 3 days after that, $238 at a clothing boutique downtown. Then the following Tuesday, $1,100 at a furniture consignment shop in Oak Park. In 2 weeks, she'd charged nearly $2,000 to my card. I sat at my kitchen table with the printed statement in front of me, and I did what any bookkeeper would do. I went line by line. None of it made sense as business inventory. A cashmere sweater, throw pillows, a wine rack, a pair of boots that cost $340. I didn't call her. I didn't call Colin. I picked up the phone and called Visa and changed my card number. That same evening, my phone rang. It was Amber. She wasn't warm this time. "Helen," she said, and her voice had a hard, flat quality. I hadn't heard from her before. "My card got declined today. I had a vendor waiting and everything." I looked completely incompetent. "What happened?" I told her calmly that I had updated my account information. There was a silence on the line. Then, "You did that on purpose?" "I needed that card for business, Helen. We had an arrangement." I said I didn't recall agreeing to an ongoing arrangement. I said I had reviewed the charges and they didn't appear to be business-related. Another silence. Then, very quietly, Colin is going to be really upset about this." She hung up. I sat in my kitchen and looked out at the backyard where Gerald used to grill on summer evenings, and I thought, here we go. 35 minutes later, Colin pulled into my driveway. I heard his car door slam harder than necessary. I was already standing in the kitchen when he came through the side door. I never lock it during the day, habit from 30 years of him coming and going. He didn't knock. His face was flushed. "Mom, what did you do?" I told him exactly what I told Amber. I showed him the printed statement. He looked at it. I watched his jaw tighten, and for a moment I thought, okay, he sees it. He sees what she's been doing. Instead, he said, "These are legitimate business expenses." She was building up her inventory for the holiday season. I pointed to the boots. He looked away. "You embarrassed her in front of a vendor, Mom. She was mortified." I said, "Colin, she spent nearly $2,000 of my money in 2 weeks without itemizing a single thing." He said, "You gave her the card. You said she could use it. I said she could use it once. For inventory. She needed Colin." I kept my voice steady. Gerald always said my composure was my greatest asset. I am not going to fight about this. The card is changed. It's done. If Amber needs money for her business, she and you can budget for it together, like adults. He looked at me for a long moment. There was something in his expression I didn't recognize. Some combination of anger and shame and something else. Then he turned around and walked out. He didn't call me for 9 days. I won't pretend that didn't hurt. It hurt considerably. I walked my 2 miles every morning and told myself it would pass, that Colin was embarrassed and needed time to see clearly. I trusted my son, whatever his faults, and he had them, as all people do. I believed he was fundamentally decent. Gerald raised him to be decent. On the 10th day, my daughter-in-law called again. This time, she was different again, back to warm, but with an edge underneath it, like sherbet with something bitter hiding in the center. She told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking. She said she understood why I might have been confused about the charges. She said she'd love to sit down and show me her business records to clear everything up. She said we should start fresh. I agreed to have coffee. I was curious. A bookkeeper is always curious about numbers. She came to my house. She brought a folder. Inside the folder were printed receipts. The same ones I'd already seen on my statement, reframed with handwritten labels. Display prop, product sample, client meeting wardrobe. I looked at them carefully. The labels were in blue pen, all in the same handwriting, all added after the fact. You could see where the ink sat on top of the receipt paper rather than printing with it. I didn't say anything about that. I offered her more coffee, but I kept the folder. After she left, I sat at my desk, the same oak desk where I did 30 years of other people's books, and I got to work. She had told me her business name, Amber Lane Consulting. I looked it up with the Illinois Secretary of State Business Registry. No record. I searched her name paired with the boutique she'd supposedly done the holiday market with. Nothing. I searched her name and Nashville, where she said she was from. What I found took me 2 days to piece together fully, and when I did, I sat very still for a long time. Amber's real last name wasn't the one on her marriage certificate. It was a name she'd legally changed 4 years ago in Tennessee. Under her original name, there were 2 civil judgments against her, One from a woman in Memphis who'd paid her $1,500 for brand consulting services never rendered, and one from a small business owner in Chattanooga for similar circumstances. There was also a record of a restraining order filed by a man she'd been in a relationship with before Colin. The complaint described financial manipulation and what the filing called systematic deception. She had done this before. She was doing it now. And my son was married to her. I thought about going straight to Colin. I ran through that conversation in my head a dozen times. I could see exactly how it would go. He'd defend her, call me jealous, accuse me of never giving her a chance. Without something undeniable in his hands, he would not believe me. I knew my son. He needed to arrive at the truth himself. I needed to give him a reason to look. I called my friend Barbara, who I've known since our children were in elementary school together. Barbara's second husband is a retired detective with the Naperville Police Department. His name is Frank. I had coffee with both of them on a Wednesday afternoon and laid out everything I had. Frank listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Helen, the civil judgments and the name change, that's a pattern that's worth looking at. But you need more than old records to move on this. You need something current." I asked him what that meant practically. He said, "You need her to say on record that she knew what she was doing." I drove home and I thought about that for 2 days. Then I called Amber and told her I'd reconsidered. I said I felt terrible about the tension between us. I said I wanted to make things right. I told her I had spoken to my financial advisor about setting up a small family fund, something that could support Colin's household in a sustainable way, and I wanted her input on how to structure it. I said I valued her business background. She accepted the invitation to dinner at my house within the hour. I want to be clear, I did not do this alone or carelessly. Frank was aware of what I was planning. I had a small digital recorder, the kind I used to use for dictating notes to myself during busy tax season, placed on the bookshelf behind the centerpiece on the dining table. It was legal in Illinois to record a conversation I was participating in. I had verified that. I also had Barbara parked down the street with her phone. Amber arrived at 6:30. She brought wine, which I thought was a nice touch. I set it aside and served sparkling water. We sat down to a chicken casserole I'd made that afternoon, and I let her talk. She talked a great deal. She was relaxed. She thought she'd won. I asked her, gently, about her consulting background. She described it in general terms. I nodded and asked about her previous clients. She gave me names that sounded plausible. I wrote them on the notepad I'd placed by my plate, as if I was being diligent. Then I asked, almost as an afterthought, whether she'd ever had any difficulties with clients, disagreements over payment, that sort of thing. She laughed. "Oh, that's part of the business. You have to know how to manage people's expectations." I nodded. "And Colin's mother? How do you manage her expectations?" A small pause. "You mean you, Helen? We're past that." "Are we?" I asked pleasantly. "I was just thinking about those receipts you brought me, the ones with the handwritten labels." Her expression changed. "Just slightly. I labeled them for clarity. After the fact, though. The ink was on top of the thermal printing." A longer pause. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do," I said, same pleasant voice. "I've been doing other people's books for 40 years, Amber." Or, is it Amber? Or is it the name on those Tennessee court records? The temperature in my dining room dropped about 10 degrees. She said, very quietly, "You've been digging into my past." "I've been protecting my family," I said. What followed was not a pleasant conversation. She tried several approaches. Indignation, then tears, then something harder and more threatening. She told me I was a bitter old woman who couldn't accept that her son had grown up. She told me she could make things very difficult for me. She said Colin would never believe me over her, and then she made a mistake. Angry people always do. She said, "You think those $2,000 are a problem? I've already transferred $6,000 out of Colin's account this month. He doesn't even check his statements. He trusts me completely, so you can take your little receipts and your little suspicions and—" She stopped. She heard herself. I looked at her calmly across the centerpiece. "I think," I said, "that you should go home now." Frank was at my door within 20 minutes of my call. Barbara came in from the car. We sat at my kitchen table and played back the recording. Frank made 2 phone calls, One to a contact in financial crimes. One to Colin. Colin arrived 40 minutes later. He sat across from me at the table where I'd just had dinner with his wife, and Frank played him the recording. He listened to the whole thing without speaking. When it was over, he looked at his phone. He opened his bank app. He sat very still for a long time. Then he put his face in his hands. I didn't say anything. I just moved my chair next to his and put my hand on his back, the way I used to when he was small and something had gone wrong at school. He was 41 years old, and he cried like he was 12, and I let him. Amber was not at the townhouse when the police arrived that night. She had apparently packed a bag and left within an hour of leaving my house. She was located 2 days later at a motel in Indiana. She was arrested and extradited to Illinois. The charges included theft by deception, financial fraud, and identity deception related to the falsified business records. The Tennessee cases were reopened as well. Colin filed for an annulment on the grounds of fraud. His attorney told him it was straightforward, given the circumstances. He sold the townhouse and moved back home for 3 months while he got back on his feet. I won't pretend those 3 months were entirely easy. Grief doesn't choose a convenient shape. He had loved her, or loved whoever he thought she was, and that loss was real even if she wasn't. There were mornings when he sat at my kitchen table and didn't talk. I made coffee and let him sit. There were nights when I heard him watching television late, and I stayed in my room and gave him space. And there were a few evenings when he came and found me in the garden, and we talked, really talked, the way we hadn't since Gerald died. He asked me once how I'd known something was wrong so early. I told him about the boots. He laughed, a short, rueful sound. $340 boots, he said, for a pop-up market. Inventory, I said. And he laughed again, and it was sad and real, and ours. He asked if I forgave him for not believing me at first. I told him there was nothing to forgive, that she was skilled at what she did, that she had fooled a lot of people before him, and that his instinct to defend his wife wasn't a character flaw. It was love, misplaced. That happens to the best of us. He moved into his own apartment in April. He calls me twice a week. He came back last Sunday and we had dinner, and he helped me finally clean out Gerald's old tool shed, which I'd been avoiding for 3 years. I am 67 years old. I live alone in my house in Naperville, and I walk 2 miles every morning past the old Methodist church on Elm Street. My life is quiet again, but it is mine. Every corner of it, every cabinet door Gerald and I picked out together, every number in every ledger I ever balanced. Mine. Numbers don't lie, and neither do I. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it actually means to trust someone. Not the easy kind of trust, the kind you extend to a stranger who holds the elevator door, but the deep kind. The kind you give to someone sitting at your dinner table, eating your food, calling you family. I trusted Amber because she was my son's wife. That felt like reason enough, and I think most people would have done the same. When someone you love chooses a person, you extend some of that love outward, like light through a window. You want it to land somewhere good. You want to be proven right about people. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. Trust isn't the same as blindness. I confused the two for a while, and that confusion cost me, not just the money. The money was almost beside the point in the end. What it cost me was time. Weeks of watching something wrong unfold in slow motion, while I told myself it was probably fine, she probably meant well, I probably misunderstood. The boots are what finally cut through it. $340. Thermal receipt, blue ink on top of the printing, labeled product sample in her handwriting. You cannot fake a ledger. You cannot relabel a number and make it something it isn't. I have known that for 40 years, and the moment I stopped trying to be generous and just looked at what was actually in front of me, the whole picture came clear. That's what I mean about intelligence being something you have to choose. It isn't passive. It doesn't just arrive. You have to decide, sometimes against every instinct toward kindness, to look at the facts plainly, to call a thing what it is. Amber had counted on me being too polite to do that. She had read me as someone who would rather smooth things over than make a scene. She wasn't entirely wrong, either. It took me longer than it should have. What I got right was not acting on emotion. When Colin showed up at my door with his face flushed, I didn't fight with him. I didn't cry. I showed him the statement. When Amber came to my table with her folder of relabeled receipts, I offered her more coffee and kept the folder. Every step of it, the research, the call to Frank, the recorded dinner, was deliberate, slow, patient, because I understood that the truth doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be documented. Colin lost something real when all of this came apart. He had loved her, or he had loved what she let him see of herself. That grief was genuine, and it deserved to be treated gently. I don't think healing asks us to pretend a wound wasn't a wound. It asks us to sit with it honestly until we know its actual shape. He did that. It took time, but he came through it with more clarity about himself than I'd seen in him in years. What Amber did will follow her, not because I wanted it to. I took no pleasure in any of this, but because that is simply how consequences work. Every choice leaves a mark somewhere. The civil judgments in Tennessee, the restraining order, the charges here in Illinois, those weren't bad luck. They were the accumulated weight of a pattern she'd chosen over and never once stopped to reckon with. I'm not angry at her. I'm really not. I think she was someone who found a way to survive that required deceiving others, and she got very good at it, and she never learned another way. That's its own kind of loss. But it cannot be my loss to carry. My life is mine again. My house, my mornings, my garden, my numbers, and my actual son, not the defended, embarrassed version of him who showed up at my door that evening, is back. That's what I'll hold on to.